she wasn't quiet. She held a lot in. Like you knew something, like the Holocaust had taken its toll. Because occasionally she would talk about something. I know, like you'd ask her about something like in the old country, and she would make asides, like little asides, and not even know it. Maybe nothing specific, but you could like tell there was something. Like after the war, she was raped by a dentist. It happened to a bunch of women. And that's how I found out. It was in the newspaper after he died. I didn't find out until you were 6 years old, and I saw it in the newspaper. And I read the headline, and Grandma started going crazy. Like when I told her about the article, I thought she was nutso. And then she told me what had happened. And I asked, Mom, why did you take so long to tell me? And she said, oh, I didn't want to bother you. Uncle Morris. Dear Amy, I recently went through glaucoma surgery, and while I'm legally blind in my right eye, I still have 20/60 vision in my left eye. Just enough to be able to continue my bridge playing, which I missed for about 10 weeks. You've asked if Hannah told me any secrets. I don't think we kept any secrets from each other. I just wish I asked her more. I'm not sure. I honestly don't remember. She never got me nervous, and I certainly don't remember her getting into any trouble. Even after we came to America, all we could be concerned about was the future. Too much for there to be interested in past stories. But I wish I'd heard them, and I wish they'd told me. It would be nice to remember some of them. My sister Hannah, your grandma, all I can remember is she was like my second mom, always taking care of me and making sure I was eating. I remember that some of her specialty breakfasts used to be a flatbread, almost like a pancake, but larger, like pan-sized, thin, very thin. That used to be, I guess, fried in a pan, then buttered, used as a roll. It's strange that when I think of my sister Hannah, I always think of cake, and my mouth starts to drool. David Chapman. Believe it or not, I used to work with my dad for years, and he never told me one story about the Holocaust. I used to work in my dad's business, and we used to manufacture clothes, and we'd sit next to each other, and we'd talk about like stocks, all sorts of stuff, but never talked about the war. I remember his older brother Benji telling me something different that was totally different than what my father told me, but that shows you never really know what the story is. I know that the Holocaust Museum apparently has incredible records of everything and statements of people. Just check there. Keep in mind that my dad and Benji, they were so young when all this happened. They didn't go through what Hannah went through, and so their memories are, they just don't have to deal with memories as bad as your grandma probably did. They all know a little bit of something and not much of anything. Very little. It's like the telephone game. But, if anybody honestly would have been able to talk, I would have thought it would have been Rizel, because Rizel was like one of these women that would never stop talking. I had told my dad at one point I would love to just bring him back and have him show me his old house and everything like that. Basically their home was taken away and apparently was sold for nothing, and you'd have a choice. You just sell it for what you get, but he doesn't like to travel anymore. But that would be an incredible trip to go back to where he grew up. I think my dad would be okay with it at this point, and it might jog his memory. Might. Uncle Morris. I remember how in Europe, before the war, we had a pretty decent life. We lived pretty well and we ate well. We had a life in Europe, in our town, and I guess we were probably about middle class or better, but we were well respected in our town before the war, before the animosity spread. There were always troublemakers in our town, of course, as usual, but there are always people who don't do any better, and there were always people that, there were people that they joined the German underground, and they used to wear these black armbands, and we were always wary of them. I think that was when the war started, actually, probably like 1933. I don't remember what year we were forced to wear the yellow Jewish star to show who we were, but I do remember that the Christian children often scared us, and I remember running home with my underwear in need of washing. We never knew about Auschwitz or the labor camps, but one night, a young man who was a troublemaker in our town, he was trying to burglarize our home. My father caught him, but he didn't turn him into the police. And I guess the man felt like he owed my father a favor. So he told my father the night before the Germans were supposed to get all of us and the rest of the Jewish families on the bus to go to the camps. So we escaped that night on horse and wagon and went to some of the surrounding towns where people hid us for a day or two at a time, different people, until we met up with some other families, Jewish families, that were running away as well. And together, we decided we were gonna pool our resources, and we built a hut in the forest. And we had gotten the help of one of the farmers who were gonna bring us food, and we were gonna pay him with whatever money and valuables we had. So we pooled everything, and that is how we survived for quite some time. So we built this hut through a small mat, so we had water running, and we lived there for quite a while, and I don't remember how long, but I remember there were approximately like 18 of us. I think there were like 5 or 6 families. So it must have been a pretty large hut. Marilyn Ostreicher. My grandmother was quiet. That's what I remember about her. From Sundays in Betty's basement. A very proper woman, very little English. I remember going to her house and eyeing a little salt and pepper shaker set. I love miniatures. And she read my mind and she said, "Marilyn, would you like these?" And I nodded, and she lovingly handed them to me. I wish I had them now. They weren't like they hugged you all the time, but they weren't the grandparents that went on and on like, ah, but I think they had been been through too much in the war, really. She was in the camps too? No, only my mom was in the camps. The rest of the family hid in the woods. I heard my grandma Shackney, she went catatonic in hiding, and then all of a sudden she just started talking after the war. Well, listen, she lost her firstborn son, and she was probably trying to deal with it the rest of her life. I don't know anything about him, Samuel. My mom would talk about him sometimes. He was smart, my mother, she was the closest to them, and she adored him. She told me that they were hiding in a tobacco farm. Samuel, my grandmother, and her younger sister Betty. She and her sister were playing outside. The Nazis came, they grabbed her and they beat her. Then when the Nazis approached the girls, my mom's brother, Samuel, he screamed, "Take me instead of my sisters," and so they did. My grandma always felt guilty that he gave up his life for her and Betty. He was the kind of brother that you have. They would run into the streets for you, and that's the kind of brother that Samuel was. So the Nazis put him in a local camp, and Grandma and Aunt Betty would sneak to that jail where he was. One time, they peered down the window, and they saw him with his hands spread up to the pane. My mother never forgot those hands, tied up in chains. Everyone else in the family survived, so Grandma always felt guilty. I heard that he and some other guys, they tried to escape by climbing a fence, and they were electrocuted. Grandma told me that later she went to a synagogue in America where on the bima there was an image of 2 hands in the same position. It's horrible when you think about it, how close they were, and then all of a sudden she saw him once and they looked at his hands through the floor and he was on the other side of the wall during the war and they saw him once, and I don't know if they were able to make contact, but they saw him through a wall, and it could be a movie. I mean, you look down and see those hands. Mom, that sounds like a story that could have been built up over time. No, I know this is true. Well, you don't know if it's true. Oh, I know. Like when Grandma was telling me, she was telling me the facts of the facts. Mom, but that's how memory works. If we tell a story again and again in our heads, eventually it becomes true in our heads. No, I know this was true. David Shackney. No. So basically, here's the story. They were all, in terms of age, was, the brother who died, I think it was, what was his name? I don't know. But I'll tell you, It's in the genealogy. If you see it, it's all there. Just trust the genealogy. I don't know if he was in the same camps, but what I know is that as soon as Czechoslovakia was invaded, he was taken away, Samuel. He was probably 18 or 19, and they didn't want any boys that age to be able to fight the Nazis, so they took the younger boys away immediately. As soon as they came, they took them, and apparently Samuel died pretty quickly. From what my father told me, and again, I don't know exactly what happened, but apparently he was responsible for removing the bodies, and he couldn't take it. And one person said he tried to escape, and another person said he tried to run against a fence to take his own life, but Cheryl Shiner. Oh, I don't know that story. No, I don't know that one. I think the story I heard was that your grandmother was working on a tobacco farm. Did you hear that? Her father sent her and Betty to hide, and that was how she was caught. I think that is when your grandmother Hannah was taken, and I know she had a husband that was killed. My Aunt Betty knew him, but she didn't say much. Just that he was strong and handsome, and your grandma was crazy about him. So strong. I don't know what that meant, but yeah, that he was wonderful, and that's all I know. And I don't know anything else, just everybody loved him. And then they went to the camps. I think there are a few stories that we all know, but as a kid, they wouldn't tell anything. No, not really, no. But we didn't ask. We were kids. I mean, we were into our own lives. It was different generations, you know. The cousins were friends and the adults were friends, and we didn't have serious conversation with our aunts and uncles. The get-togethers were just fun. I don't know. What the adults would do, we'd eat lots of food, lemon bars. Did anyone tell you about the lemon bars? and we would all play. Oh, and your mom and I, we had a charm collection. Like in those little machines, we'd get those charms. And that's what we'd play with when we all got together. Just add to our charm collections. Maybe later on, we tried to figure it all out. What age? Like in my teens, I started hearing more and more stories about it, but not from mom or dad. I think there are stories, maybe like Eli Wiesel books I read, and that was how I learned more about it. I think there are stories that all the kids have heard, and that's it. Only like little stories, like one story that Shmuel was taken away, and it was Hanukkah time. And my father remembers they had a busload of kids, young kids, that they were taking away. And he remembers Aunt Betty running after the bus with a plate of latkes. She must have been like 10. Shmuel, Samuel, Shmuel. I don't know anything else about the older brother, just the name, Shmuel. And when he was in the camps, the only other story I heard was that he killed himself against a fence, the electrical fence, because you heard that too? Oh, good. She told me that they wanted to make him like a capo. Do you know what that is? Like someone who would make decisions about the other Jews and like hit them or whatever, and he just couldn't do it, so he killed himself. Your mom must have heard that too, from Hannah, right? No? No, I could have sworn she heard that before. Or Betty running after the bus with latkes? That doesn't ring a bell? Uncle Morris. Samuel never had a chance at life. He died at the age of 20 in Auschwitz concentration camp. He was the first to be taken to the labor camps when those gray buses used to show up to take the young men to the labor camps. I remember the whole family was out in town where the buses were, standing, just picking them up, where all the families were saying goodbye to the young men. We never saw Samuel again. I don't remember how old he was. He may have been 17, but we found out after the war that he had died at 20. When the Germans kept such terrific records, they were so exact with all the records they keep of everyone's life and death. And it was, as a matter of fact, it was my grandson, Jordan, Cheryl's son, who was an exchange student in Germany. He went to a museum and discovered those records in the basement of the museum, and he had given me that information. That was the first time I found out that when my brother had died. That was just a coincidence. It has always been a puzzlement